At 81°C, the world no longer felt alive. The air was so cold it cracked inside the lungs, each breath sharp enough to draw blood if taken too fast. Moisture froze instantly, on eyelashes, in nostrils, on the edges of thought itself. Even movement felt delayed, as if the cold had thickened time. The land stretched outward in every direction, an endless plain of white and pale blue, broken only by wind-carved ridges, and the low silhouette of a lone yurt crouched against the ground. The sky hung heavy and colourless, neither night nor day, reflecting no warmth, offering no mercy. Inside that yurt lived a woman who had seen a full century pass. She was 100 years old. Though age had not taken her will, her back curved, yes, her joints ached constantly, but her eyes were sharp, hardened by decades of survival in a place where mistakes killed quickly. Her hands told her story better than words ever could. Thick fingers bent by arthritis, skin toughened like old leather, scars from rope burns, horn cuts, frostbite, and fire. These hands had pulled newborn lambs from snowdrifts, built shelters in storms, and buried loved ones beneath frozen ground. Outside, her snow sheepin huddled together in their pen. Their wool was thick and white, designed by nature for this brutal land, but even they trembled now. Their breath rose in steady clouds, bodies pressed close, hooves stamping nervously. They were more than livestock. They were survival, meat for food, wool for warmth, life continuing through the winter. The woman stepped outside to check them. The cold slammed into her like a wall. Her furs creaked as they stiffened, ice forming instantly along seams and edges. The snow beneath her boots screamed softly with each step, compressed crystals shattering underfoot. She moved carefully, deliberately, conserving strength, as she had done all her life. That was when she heard it. A sound so low it was almost beneath hearing. A vibration more than a howl. She froze. The ground seemed to hum the way it did before an avalanche or a distant storm. Then it came again, layered, overlapping, spreading across the plain. Not one voice. Many. Too many. Her heart slowed, not from fear but recognition. Wolves. Not a hunting pair, not a pack. An army. Her gaze lifted to the far ridge, eyes squinting through the frozen haze. Shadows moved there, long fluid shapes sliding across the snow. Pale eyes flickered in the distance like dying stars. 1,000 wolves were coming. At 81°C, even predators should not roam in numbers like this. Hunger had driven them past reason, past caution. The woman inhaled slowly, the cold slicing into her chest. She did not pray. She did not curse. She looked at her sheep, then at the staff leaning against the fence. Old wood reinforced with bone, polished by decades of use. Her life had taught her one thing above all else. The cold takes those who hesitate. She stepped forward into the frozen wind, alone against the white, as the sound of wolves rolled toward her like distant thunder. They crested the ridge without sound. 1,000 shapes poured over the frozen rise, flowing down the slope like spilled ink across snow. Grey backs, white flanks, ice-dark shadows, wolves of every size and scar, moving with a unity that made them seem less like animals and more like a single breathing thing. Their eyes caught the light first. Hundreds of pale reflections blinked into existence, fixed on the enclosure below, on the sheep, on warmth, on life. The woman stood alone between them. The wind carried their scent to her, fur, blood, hunger sharpened by weeks of failed hunts. At 81°C, even wolves burned energy faster than they could replace it. Desperation clung to them like frost. The sheep felt it too. They pressed together harder, hooves scraping frozen ground, soft bleats trembling from their throats. One ram struck the fence in panic, wood cracking beneath the impact. The woman did not turn back. She straightened as much as her aged spine would allow and stepped forward, placing herself fully outside the enclosure. Snow creaked under her boots as she moved, deliberately slow, claiming space. She reached down and gripped her staff. It was taller than she was now, the wood darkened by age, its tip capped with bone polished smooth by decades of striking ice and earth. She planted it firmly into the snow, leaning on it as much for balance as for defiance. The wolves fanned out. They did not rush. They circled, spreading wide, cutting off invisible escape routes that did not exist. Steam poured from their mouths, thick and constant. Muscles rippled beneath winter coats built for killing cold. At this distance, she could hear them breathing. One wolf stepped forward, a large one scarred across the muzzle, one ear torn. Its eyes never left hers. It tested the air, sniffing, gauging weakness. She met its stare. Her eyes did not waver. "This is my ground," she said aloud, her voice thin but steady, cracking like old ice. The words vanished quickly into the wind, but the intent did not. "You don't take from me." The wolf tilted its head. It had hunted prey that fled, prey that froze, prey that screamed. This prey stood still. Another wolf crept closer, then another. Teeth flashed as lips pulled back in silent threats. Paws sank into the snow, claws finding purchase. The circle tightened. The woman could feel her heart beating slow and heavy in her chest. Pain flared in her knees, her hips, her hands. The cold gnawed at every exposed inch of skin, searching for a way inside. She did not step back. She shifted her weight, widened her stance, and lifted her chin. Fear would invite them. Stillness confused them. And confusion, she knew, was sometimes enough. The wolves paused, just for a breath, just for a heartbeat. In that fragile space between hunger and uncertainty, the old woman stood alone, at the center of a ring of teeth, daring the cold, daring the pack, daring the world to take what she was not ready to surrender. No one chose a place to sleep. They were placed. The youngest were guided first, small bodies already trembling from the cold and exhaustion. They were wrapped in the thickest furs, layers pulled up over their heads until only noses and eyes showed. The injured and the old followed, eased down carefully. Their positions adjusted so they lay closest to the stored warmth. The rest formed the outer ring. Adults lay shoulder to shoulder, backs to the wind, knees drawn up to conserve heat. Their bodies became walls, living insulation against the cold. Spears and stone tools were set within reach, not for comfort, but because danger did not sleep just because humans tried to. The fire crackled softly, its light low and steady. Heated stones were passed inward, tucked near feet, pressed to chests, shared when their warmth faded. When one stone cooled, another took its place. Warmth moved through the group like breath. They did not sleep deeply. Sleep came in fragments, short, shallow stretches that ended at the slightest sound or change in wind. One person remained awake at all times, feeding the fire, brushing drifting snow from the walls, listening for the scrape of paws or the cough of distant predators. When the watcher's eyes grew heavy, another took their place without words. Bodies shifted constantly, adjusting to the cold, redistributing heat. A shoulder pressed closer, a fur was pulled tighter. A child whimpered in their sleep and was immediately soothed by a hand resting on their back. This was not rest, it was coordination. Individually, none of them could survive the night. Alone, the cold would slip in, steal warmth, steal awareness, and finally steal breath. Together, they created something stronger than shelter. They created a shared warmth, a shared vigilance, a human shape the cold could not easily break. And as the stars burned overhead, cold and distant, the group endured the night, not by sleeping through it, but by facing it together. The wind changed first. It came suddenly, sweeping down from the high ice like a living wall, howling across the plain with renewed fury. Snow lifted from the ground and filled the air, not falling but racing, tearing visibility apart, grain by frozen grain. The storm did not announce itself. It simply arrived. The fire guttered and flared wildly, its flames bending low, smoke shredding into nothing before it could rise. The woman turned her body sideways, instinctively shielding the brand with her own bulk, hunched and shaking as the cold bit deeper than before. The wolves faltered. Their formation broke as the wind erased scent trails and blinded their eyes. Snow packed into their fur, clung to whiskers, filled noses meant to track prey with deadly precision. They shook their heads, snarled in frustration, paws slipping on hardening ice. Hunting depended on coordination. The storm stole that from them. One wolf lunged blindly and misjudged the distance, skidding too close to the fire. The woman thrust the burning brand forward with what strength she had left. The wolf yelped as sparks scorched its face and retreated in panic, crashing into another. Confusion rippled through the pack. The firelight flickered madly now, stretching shadows, multiplying the woman's shape until she seemed larger than she was, unnatural, relentless, impossible. Wolves snapped at empty air, eyes tracking illusions formed by flame and blowing snow. The cold was supposed to favor them. Instead, it betrayed them. The sheep huddled tighter behind the fence, bleating softly but alive, their warmth pooling together in a way the wolves could no longer sense. The wind scattered every trace of them, every promise of easy food. The woman felt her strength draining fast. Her hands were numb, her arms burned with exhaustion. Each breath felt thinner than the last, slicing her chest open from the inside. She leaned harder on her staff now, legs trembling uncontrollably. Still she stood. She planted herself between the wolves and the sheep, shoulders squared, fire held high like a challenge. Her eyes stung with frozen tears, but they remained open, fixed on the shifting shadows ahead. One wolf broke away. It turned, tail low, ears flattened, not in fear but in calculation. Hunger pulled it forward. Instinct pulled it back. Instinct won. Another followed, then another. The great circle loosened, then unraveled entirely. Wolves peeled away in small groups, melting back into the storm, their shapes swallowed by blowing snow and distance. No howls followed them. Only the wind remained. The woman did not move until the last shadow vanished. Then her knees gave out. She sank slowly into the snow, the fire slipping from her hand and dying with a final hiss. Her staff fell beside her, half buried instantly by drifting white. She leaned back against the fence, eyes closing at last, breath shallow but steady. The cold wrapped around her again, gentle now, almost quiet. The sheep pressed close behind her, their warmth reaching through the wood, through her frozen furs, grounding her in the living world. She had not chased the wolves away. She had simply endured longer than they could. And in that frozen dawn before dawn, as the storm raged on without her, the cold made its choice, and it did not choose the pack. The storm passed as quietly as it had arrived. Wind slowed to a whisper, then to nothing at all. Snow settled back onto the land, smoothing over scars left by claws, fire, and footsteps. The sky lightened almost imperceptibly, a pale grey bleeding into the endless white. Morning had come. The woman stirred. At first, she did not know where she was. Pain bloomed everywhere at once, deep in her joints, sharp along cracked skin, dull and heavy in her chest. Her breath rattled, slow and shallow. When she opened her eyes, the world shimmered, edges blurring in the cold light. Warmth touched her face. She frowned, confused. Then she felt it, thick wool pressed against her arms, her legs, her back. The snow sheep had crowded close through the night, bodies packed tightly along the fence, their combined heat forming a living wall around her fallen form. They had not fled. They had stayed. She let out a weak breath that might have been a laugh. Footsteps crunched nearby. Voices followed, human voices, urgent and disbelieving. Figures emerged through the thinning haze, neighbors from distant yurts, family drawn by the column of smoke that had risen in the night and never gone unanswered. They froze when they saw her, alive. Kneeling beside her, wrapped in sheep and frost, staff half buried in snow, eyes open. Hands reached for her gently, careful not to break what the cold had already wounded. Warm blankets were pulled over her shoulders. Someone pressed a cup of hot broth to her lips. She drank slowly, the heat burning all the way down, bringing tears to her eyes. They told her what they had seen. Tracks circling the enclosure, scorched snow, blood frozen where wolves had come too close. They told her the count, Hundreds, maybe more. They asked how she had done it, how she had faced 1,000 wolves alone at Daicine and lived. She listened quietly, eyes half closed, the fire of the night still flickering behind them. When they finished, she shrugged beneath the blankets, a small movement that cost her more strength than she showed. "I was colder," she said softly, voice rough but steady, "and I had more to lose." The sheep bleated gently, pressing closer as if agreeing. Word spread fast across the frozen land. Of a woman older than fear, of wolves that turned away, of a night when hunger met resolve and lost. Long after her tracks vanished beneath fresh snow, the story remained, told around fires, passed through winters. A reminder that strength does not fade with age, that courage does not require youth, and that sometimes, when the world brings teeth and cold and numbers beyond counting, all it takes to survive is standing your ground for one more night,